So, here's a few tips in laying out a wall. Um, this wall is 40 feet long. You know, that's pretty long. But you're not gonna run into that many, well, unless you do it unless you want to frame as a profession. But anyway, so when I cut my plates, my bottom plate and my top plate at the same time. So I, I cut like I use 16 footers. So all my 2x4s that are not studs, pre-cut studs, okay, come from my plate stock. What I call plate stock, or what's known as plate stock. Plate stock are these. These are for everything that's not a pre-cut stud. So your plates, your blocking, your cripples, even the trimmers. These are trimmers, shoulder studs, whatever you want to call them. They're the ones that they don't go all the way. They're not full length, so they're not a pre-cut stud, but they hold up the header. And then your cripples are your smaller ones. That's your sill. That's a header, and then this is also a cripple. So anyway, so the plate stock is for those. So what I do is I lay out my plates. I get them all cut. If they're 16 footers, so if your wall is longer than 16 feet, you're gonna have to add on. But you wanna butt them together, and you want to make sure that the total length, whatever that length that you need for that wall is accurate. Because what happens is you cut one at 16 foot, and then like this one is another 16 footer. You cut another 16. The 16 footers they're always a little bit longer, so you always have to cut a little bit off. They're not exactly 16 foot. And then in this case, I had to add another 8 feet, right? So when I add up the total, when I run the tape measure with all three of them pieces butted together, I come out at 40 feet. It's easier to get off by 1/8 of an inch, or even a 1/4 inch, especially if you're not experienced. Just you think, okay, I cut at 16, but really it's 16 and a 16th, or 16 and an 1/8. So you want to try to keep your measurements as accurate as possible. If the house is supposed to be 40 feet long, you want to make sure it's 40 feet long. I mean, if it's 40 feet and a quarter, it's not going to make that much difference. But the idea is to keep the dimensions. So anyway, so once I do that, and I lay out both my plates at the same time, and then I put them next to each other. Like, okay, this is your cap plate here. But I would take this bottom plate and I mean this top plate and that bottom plate, and I would have them together like this, right, laying next to each other, all butted together. And then I start making my pencil marks, my layout. Okay, so when I do my layout, I always lay out window openings, door openings. This wall only has one window, but if there's any door openings, window openings, or wall intersections, these that are like this are where a wall runs into a perpendicular. Okay, so when this is standing up, there'll be walls that'll be coming out this way into the house. Okay, and those are called channels. We call them in the trade, they're called channels. It's 3 2x4s nailed together. A lot of times you can use blocking in here. You just need blocking. You don't need to use a full stud. I didn't have any blocking because it's my first wall. Now I've got pieces that I'll probably use. It says a 2x4. Anyway, so I lay those out first, and then I go back and I lay out my 16-inch centers. Because it's easy to start getting screwed up if you're trying to do them both at the same time. And since your walls and your windows and doors don't always fall where the 16-inch centers are, it's easy to lay that out first, and then do your 16-inch centers around that, and then go back with your tape measure, and then you measure every 16 inches, or 24 inches if you're doing 24-inch stud layouts. Anyway, so I do that, and then after that, you've got situations like, I build my channels. Now, if I'm doing a big job running production, when I had a framing crew, I would have like the helpers just build channels. I mean, all they would do is build channels, build these ends, okay, and then this is where the outside wall will run into it. So they build these. It's just a L. It's two 2x4s nailed together. and they would cut all the cripples, cut all the headers. You know, it's production, so you're trying to save movement and save. You want everything ready, right? So you got your helpers doing that. But anyway, in this case, you know, it's a small job. What I do is I nail my trimmers to my, they call these king studs, the ones that are full length. So I nail the trimmers to the king studs, whether it's doorways or windows. Get that done. Get all your pieces cut. Get your cripples, your sill, your header. Get all those cut, and then you want to assemble this first, because what happens is you got a toenail in here and into the, not toenail, but you've got a nail into the side. And if you're putting your studs together like this, and all of a sudden you nail this one in, and then now how do you get a nail gun in here? I mean, you can, but it ends up being a little bit of a hassle. So it's better to just put this window package thing together. Then you can toenail, you don't have anything in the way, and then you can come back and put in your studs. I do the same thing with my channels. So I put all the channels together, and then I put them in place, and then I come back and fill in with my studs when I'm nailing. It's just the way I do it. It seems to work out better. There's less hassle. You can do it one way or the other. It doesn't matter, but it's just one of those little things that makes the job a little smoother on average. And then I always put my cap plate on. Right, so that's all. See, that's all nailed on and ready to go. And then these are where your wall intersections are. So what I do here, what I do with these is, I always cut these back. I don't cut them exactly to where this 2x4 will be when this wall is stood up, and there's another wall here, and your cap plate ties in here. I leave it back a good 1/4 inch or more on each side, and then so once you get your walls all stood up and you do what's called plumb and line, which is where you level and plumb all your walls, it gives you a little play because you're gonna have your other wall, the cap plate's going to come in like this, right? It doesn't need to fit tight. It's not there for that reason. It's there to put some nails in this way to lock the walls together. So I've got some slop in here, so when I go to level, once this wall stood up and leveled, I've got room to level this. You know, it gives you a little play, because if you're locked in there tight, now what if this wall is out of level and your other ones are level, because it's framing, you know, nothing is exact. This gives you a little play to adjust this wall that'll be coming out this way, so that you can adjust this wall to get it, you know, more level. So that's a little trick that framers do. Another thing is where you have a joint, like where this one is seamed together, you want to, when you put your cap plate on, you want to make sure you try to overlap at least 4 feet. Sometimes you can't, because maybe there's a wall intersection here, so you can't, but you try to. And then I always, you know, here, like I put more nails here on each side of this. I usually do like two, you know, I put them basically on top of, I put 2 nails on top of where each stud is. Obviously I do that here when I nail this to this, but then when I put the cap plate on, I do 2 nails, almost the same as if you're nailing this to the studs. But I add a few more here at the joint. It just gives it a little more stiffness when you're lifting the wall up, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the plywood on, all the OSB. I'm going to put the building paper on, the house wrap. Well, they call it Tyvek. I don't use Tyvek brand because it's overpriced. But anyway, so I'm going to put all that on, and then I'm going to stand this wall up all in one piece. Now, some guys, especially here in Texas, people don't. They stand the walls up and then they go back and put the sheeting on. I don't understand that. I've never understood it. I mean, I've heard a lot of excuses why guys do it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anything you can do when the wall is on the ground is faster than trying to go back and put the plywood sheets on, even your building paper. I mean, it's easy. You take the roll of building paper, you roll the whole thing out, you sit there with a hammer tacker, you tack it on. I mean, it's much faster than trying to do it when the wall's standing up. Just like putting the plywood on. I mean, like I said, I've heard all the excuses. It doesn't make sense to me. They say, well, what if, you know, like if you're building on a concrete slab, you know, we're building on a wood deck, which is already leveled, but let's say we're building on a concrete slab. It doesn't, you know, if the concrete they say, well, what if the concrete's really out of level? Well, if your concrete's that out of level, I mean, then you've got bigger problems than that. I mean, let's say this is 40 feet long, and let's say my foundation that I did was 1 inch out of level from that corner to that corner. It's not. I checked it. I used a laser level, and it's everything's within a 1/4 inch around the whole foundation. But let's say it's out 1 inch. Okay, so that's 1 inch higher, maybe here than here, across 40 feet, right? So that means even if you had 10-foot ceilings, if it's 1 inch and 40 feet, in a 10-foot ceiling, it would only cause this wall, if you have it sheeted, you can't adjust it, you know what I'm saying? Okay, it would only be out of level by a 1/4 inch. Well, a 10-foot wall in a house being out of plumb by 1/4 inches is not that big of a deal. It's acceptable. If you stick in a 1/2 inch, it's too much. But nobody's going to know. Go put a level on a house most of the time. There's no reason to make it perfect. You know, we're not building cabinets here, right? So that excuse about the slab being out of level, it doesn't apply. You know, and even if there's dips in the slab, so you stand the wall up, it's sheeted, and now you just take your sledgehammer, you can pound, you know, if there's a dip in the concrete, you can just pound the plate down a little bit tighter, and then when you bolt it down, it'll squeeze it down anyway. So I don't know, there's a lot of guys that they don't sheet first. Here in Texas, they don't. I mean, I haven't seen anybody sheet first. I mean, this to me is the way I've always seen it done. It's the way I've always done it. It's a lot faster. So if you have a way to lift the wall, now I've got wall jacks. So I've got 3 wall jacks, which I'll do a video about when I start using them. It's nothing for 3 wall jacks to lift this wall up. You know, it's not that heavy, especially, you know, here we use 2x4s. It's only an 8-foot wall. All of our lumber's kiln dried. It doesn't weigh that much. I know when I framed on the West Coast, it's all the lumber's green. It's 2x6 walls. You know, I mean, they can get a little heavy, but still not too heavy for the wall jacks. Maybe I would use 4 instead of 3. Anyway, so that's on framing walls. There's just a couple of. Oh, here's another thing too. After the deck was done, I went around and I snapped my chalk lines here, 3.5 inches in basically. Okay, so I did this one. And then, as you can see, you can see the line here. So I did it on all 4 sides, made sure I'm 30 feet wide, 40 feet long. Okay, so I did all that. And then before you stand the wall up, what I do is I put the bottom plate right on the line here. So the bottom plate follows right on this line. And then on this side, I toenail it in. Okay, every couple feet, I toenail it in. So so this bottom plate is nailed in. Okay, it's toenailed in all the way and down every couple feet. The reason you do that is when you go to stand this wall up, those nails act like a hinge. Okay, if you didn't have that, you went to stand this wall up, you got maybe halfway up, the thing would just slide right off the deck. So you toenail it in. It acts like a hinge. The nails basically is kind of coming out here and then going into the decking. So you stand the wall up, and then those nails will poke out inside a little bit, but you just bend them down with the hammer. You'll see they'll they pull out of the decking when you lift the wall up. They're just there to keep the wall from going off the from flying off the deck, which is what would happen. I mean, there's nothing to hold it. If you don't do that and you go to lift this wall up, whether you're doing it by hand or with jacks, it'll come off the deck. So if you're gonna try framing, make sure you toenail it in. There's other videos on YouTube about doing this. It's common practice. Anyway, so before I sheet it, I pull a tape measure from that corner to the opposite diagonal corner, and from that corner to the opposite diagonal corner. Okay, those 2 measurements should be the same. If they're not, it means the wall's not square. That's how you square your wall before you start putting the plywood on. So, or the sheeting. Okay, I keep calling it plywood. It's just a habit. But anyway, yeah. So you pull your diagonal, and then if you need to scoot the top this way or that way to make, I have a 20-pound sledgehammer, which comes in handy. You just hit the end of the plates, the top plates, and you can either move it this way, or if you need to move it that way. To make those dimensions should be equal. When they're equal, the wall is square. And then I come and sheet it, and then I'll come and put the building paper on it, and then stand it up, and then I'll brace it, and then I do that. So I'll do this wall. These are my short walls. Then I'll do this wall on this side, and then I've got my rake walls, my 2 end rake walls, because it's a gable end, a gable house. So I'll do those last. You don't have to do them last. It's just the way I do it. Let's see here. Is there anything else? I mean, I hope some of this stuff is clear. It's kind of a little bit clear, I guess, to me, because I understand it. You know, nobody taught me any of this stuff. I just figured it out on my own. I mean, I started when I was a kid. You know, I just was interested in carpentry, so I just started learning. I think I was like self-taught framer. Watching houses being built in the neighborhood kind of is what steered me in the right direction. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's just becoming familiar with it. So anyway, those are a few tips that I can think of that, you know, information that might be kind of hard to find unless you start doing it. I'm trying to think if there's just anything else. I think that's it. I mean, that's enough for now anyway. There'll be more as I think of stuff. Okay, time to get back to work.